death through tight lacing. It would be impossible to form anything like an accurate estimate of the thousands of persons who have fallen victim to the odious fashion of tight lacing. A melancholy instance of this baneful practice occurred in Newtown on Saturday night. Dorothea, the eldest daughter of Vincent Postlethwaite, Esquire, a highly respectable and wealthy merchant of Newtown, died suddenly at a ball given in her father's house. While dancing with a young gentleman to whom she was engaged, she was observed by her partner to turn pale and to gasp spasmodically for breath. She tottered for a few brief seconds and then fell. The general impression was that she had fainted. Restoratives were applied without producing the desired effect. A doctor was sent for, who, upon examining the patient, pronounced the ill-fated young lady to be dead. The consternation of the family and guests may be readily imagined, which was not a little enhanced by the medical gentleman, declaring that Miss Postlethwaite had died from no other cause than tight lacing. The heart's action had been impeded, the excitement and exertion under the circumstances too great a strain upon the system, and hence sudden death. Our artist furnished us with a picture which is significantly sufficient in itself, without a commentary. Many of our fair readers will be at no loss to divine its meaning, and they will do well by taking a warning therefrom. Attacked by rats. On Friday evening last week, Mr. O'Brien, residing at 27 Wellington Street, was sitting at supper, when piercing cries were heard from the nursery, which is on the top floor. Mr. O'Brien hurried to the spot and found his youngest child, a little girl of about 15 months, had been attacked by several rats. Upon his entering the room with a light, they leapt from the bed and escaped. The poor child had been horribly gnawed about the head and arm. Passing out from the lobby to call his dog, which was in the next room, Mr. O'Brien saw a swarm of rats mounting the stairs, not at all daunted by the appearance of lights. The dog, however, soon put them to flight. The poor child's arm was much swelled and discoloured. She was at once removed to King's College Hospital. The injury to the arm is regarded by the medical officer as of a very serious character, and it's feared that an amputation may be necessary. An Artful Monkey. At the Greenwich Police Court a few days since, a respectably dressed man presented himself and asked the assistance of Mr. Maud under peculiar circumstances. He stated that he resides at Sydenham, in a house adjoining which a person is keeping a large-sized, old and artful monkey, which he understood gained a first prize at a recent show of monkeys held at North Woolwich Gardens. The monkey was kept in a garden, having a chain and a strap, the latter of which he contrived to unfasten, and thus getting loose, had pursued his, the applicant's, wife, who had to jump over a fence to avoid it. He had spoken to the owner of the monkey, from whom he could get no satisfaction, and neither his wife nor his family was safe. He thought the owner of such an animal should be compelled to cage it. Mr. Maud said that he was afraid he could not render the applicant any assistance, as he had not the power of the Court of Chancery to grant an injunction against the owner. Neither could he issue a warrant for the monkey's apprehension, its trespassing not being in a public thoroughfare. The applicant's only remedy would be in a civil, not in a criminal court of law. Killed by a coffin. Dr. Lancaster held an inquiry at the University College Hospital on the body of Henry Taylor, aged 26. The evidence of Mr. E. J. Redding, an undertaker's foreman, and others, show that on the 19th of October, the deceased was engaged at a funeral at Kensal Green Cemetery. The church service having been finished, the coffin and mourners proceeded in coaches towards the place of burial. The day being damp, the foreman directed the coaches with the mourners to proceed to the grave by the footway, and the hearse across the grass towards the gravedigger, who was motioning the nearest way. The coffin was moved from the hearse, and being carried down the path, only 3 feet by 6 feet wide, by 6 bearers, when orders were given to turn, so that the coffin, which was what is known in the trade as a 4-pound leaden one, should go head first. While the men were changing, it is supposed that the deceased caught his foot against a side stone and stumbled. The other bearers, to save themselves, let the coffin go, and it fell with a great force onto the deceased, fracturing his jaw and ribs. The greatest confusion was created amongst the mourners who witnessed the accident, and the widow of the person about to be buried nearly went into hysteria. Further assistance having been procured, the burial service was proceeded with, whilst the deceased was conveyed to surgery and ultimately to the above-mentioned hospital, where he expired on the 24th of October. The jury recommends that straps should be placed around coffins, which would then prevent such accidents. Verdict: accidental death. An old man's affection for his dog. At the Suffolk Police Court the other day, Morris Day, a feeble-looking old man who carried a small black dog under his arm, appeared before Mr. Shell on a summons for keeping a dog without a licence. Police Constable 45M stated that he saw the dog wandering at large without a muzzle in Barford Street, Bermondsey, and found that it belonged to the defendant, who had no licence for the animal. In answer to the magistrate, the defendant, who burst out crying, said, "I've had this little dog 18 years, and I've paid the licence for it as long as I could. I have lately had an attack of paralysis, and I've not earned any money, so I've not been able to pay for the licence." Why don't you part with the dog? I don't like to part with it after having had it so long. The little dog does nobody any harm. You can't be allowed to keep a dog without paying the duty, however long you may have had it. You're fined 7 shillings and 6pence, or 7 days. The old man was locked up in default. Mr. Nairn, chief clerk of the court, has written in reference to this case. He says, the fine was paid early on Monday morning, and that letters containing money and telegrams stating the sender's wish to pay the fine have been received at this court in great numbers from all parts of the country. During the day, upwards of 30 ladies and gentlemen attended the court with the object of paying the fine. Amongst the applicants were several ladies and gentlemen of title, one of whom went to the dog's home at Battersea and restored the dog to its owner, after paying the licence for the ensuing year.